Hi and welcome to the Book Bar, where everything bookish is on the menu. I'm Ann Jeanette Barr, and today I'm going to tell you what my top 3 reads of 2022 were. Okay, it's still very much winter here in Alaska. It's March 2nd, 3rd, and we have a couple of feet of snow on the ground, and I think we're getting more very soon. So having something warm. I'm still obsessed with these. Can you see these tea drops? They've had like a rebrand, like the things look different. I order 25 of these every 60 days. I have them on subscription. They're so good. This is the citrus ginger. There's no caffeine in these, so I just love them because I can have them at any time during the day. See if I can open this up and share with you what it looks like on the inside, in case you haven't seen before. Isn't that cute? Oh, wrong way. There you go. Isn't that cute? They're just little, there's different shapes, but you just put them in your hot water and then you let them dissolve. And these citrus ginger ones take, 30 seconds to dissolve. I actually recycle, I'll get that later, but I actually recycle the wrappers because it's the same plastic as grocery bags, so that's nice. I know that single use is not great, but I just take it back to the grocery store with my plastic grocery bags. So I did confirm with the company that it's the right plastic for that, so that's good. Yeah, anyway, so good. Oh, and I don't know, I hope that it hasn't been like this for you, but my family has been passing around a cold for over a month, and so ginger is making its rotation. Oh, so warm. Okay, while that is steeping, I share with you in no particular order the 3 books that really knocked it out of the park for me last year. I read a lot. I read a lot of manuscripts that are not published yet because I'm a literary agent. I read some books for book contests that I cannot share, and I read a lot to my children, but I did read quite a few novels and nonfiction for adults, and 3 really stood out, and there's an absolute theme here, so you'll see what I mean after I tell you about them. I could not pick a favorite of these 3, so we're just going to go one by one, starting with The Winter Sea by Susanna Kearsley. So this is the first book I've read by this author, and I think it was a cover by. I think I said, oh, that sounds like something I would like, but I must have read something or heard something from someone about either the fact that there's Scotland or timey-wiminess in here, because something obviously caught my eye, but it was sitting on my shelf for a while, and then I decided to go to Scotland, and I made a video about that, and I read this before I went there. And so this is centered around a woman in present day named Carrie, and she is an author, and she is trying to write historical fiction, and in particular she's fascinated by the Jacobite Rebellion, which is when the Scots wanted to put Bonnie Prince Charlie, or both Prince Charlies, on Charles on the throne, but they were exiled in France, and it was this time right before Culloden and the whole fall of the Highland culture. So she's fascinated by this, and she's trying to write a novel, and she has it set in France because, like I said, they're in exile in France, and so she had it set there, and she has an agent, so that's kind of fun. There's an author and an agent in this book who lives in Scotland, and she goes to visit, and anyway, it turns out she goes to Scotland. She decides, this is the thing, I'm supposed to be writing the book in Scotland because of this castle called Slains Castle, and so it has these like fun, cool, not quite gothic, but castle, vibes, because this castle just enraptures her. So that's the setup, is that she's an author and she's writing historical fiction in Scotland. And very quickly, she finds that for some reason she knows things about this Scottish castle and these characters she's writing about that she shouldn't know, because she hasn't found them in her research. They come to her in dreams, and she just knows them. So it's very fun. There's a time slip element to this. There's some science that's, loose science about shared genetic memory it is so fun. And as it unravels, you get to learn the story from 1708 and the story from present day, and they intertwine, and there's romance, and it's just everything. So I loved this book. I know that there are more, and I've purchased them. They're over there somewhere. I'll get to them, but it's a great standalone. And I don't know that the other books, I think the other books are related, but it's not a series. They are similar and along the same lines, but it's not like a direct follow-up. So that's why I felt comfortable just stopping with this nice, substantial, lovely, escapist novel. And while I was in Scotland, I definitely had lots of moments where it was like, oh, this is just like this place. And so Slains is supposed to be somewhere on the east coast of Scotland, and I've visited a few very charming villages around old castle ruins out there. Villages, small towns, not villages, but would have been. And yes, I want to live in this novel, and someday I want to live in Scotland. But Scotland aside, it was a very, very fun novel. So this was one of my top 3. Tell me if you've read this or any of her others, and tell me if there's, because I know she has more than one series of books, what else you love of her. I had this feeling when I started reading this, like, oh, this could be a favorite, please don't mess it up, and then she didn't. But the ending's kind of controversial, so try not to give spoilers, but weigh in on the ending if you've read this. I'm interested to hear if you loved it or if you hated it. I loved it. I have no problem with how it shook out. I get why people say what they say about the ending. If you've read it, you'll know what I mean. But no, I loved it. I thought it was great. All right. So this one is less connected to the other two as they are to each other, and you'll see what I mean. But there's still the same vibes for all 3 of these. I definitely had like a science-y, I don't know, escape to another world kind of year, but less in the fantasy side than normal. So normally I would like that kind of book, and I would gravitate toward fantasy. This year, I gravitated toward sci-fi. But this book and the one I'm going to show you later are a particular kind of sci-fi. They have a particular feel. So The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell. My boss recommended this to me. She was shocked I had not read it, and I bought a stack of books that she was like, no, you can't, be a person in this literary world without having read these books. And I've been working my way through them. She was totally right on this book. Man, this book tears you into pieces. So The Sparrow is one of, I think, 2 or 3 in this series. I'm looking over at my shelf where all the books that I'm supposed to be reading are, and I did buy the here. I did buy the follow-up to this one, Children of God. This one seems to have more mixed reviews than this one, and I haven't gotten to it yet. So tell me if you like this. Did you like that? Gosh, there's so many intriguing things about this book. I don't even know where to start, except that it is a first contact story. So particular vein of sci-fi, obviously, but the interesting aspects of the story, the sci-fi first contact are totally interesting, but the anthropological research and also attention of this author is what really makes this book sing. So, not only do we have humans meeting an extraterrestrial group of beings for the first time, which is always an exciting premise of a book, but you really get to dive into their societal structure and their culture, and it's just kind of like if you had to imagine a world, start from scratch, which every author does, especially fantasy sci-fi, could you consistently build that whole world to make it believable and rational, logical in the way it's laid out? And she did that, and she still managed to have like so many twists and surprises that you just never knew what was coming next. So trigger warnings for this, everything. if there's something traumatic that gets you, it's probably in this book. So a lot of people have said I couldn't get through that. It was too dark. It was too hard. But there is definitely a through line of hope in this book. You just really do have to kind of put in the work to get there. And there's a lot of sadness and dark things that happen in just the most beautiful way. So a little bit more on the premise. There is a first contact made, but it's through music, which is just so interesting. And the people who find this first contact signal, the ones who find the evidence of it, hand the information over to a group of Jesuit priests. So you've got this group of people, including some Jesuit priests, who are interested in, you know, the question of what do God's other people look like? And then you've got some people who are like not interested in the God aspect, like, you know, maybe there's a God, maybe there's not. This has nothing to do with them, but they're all in the priest's kind of sphere. So you've got almost a group of friends that go to explore this new place. And you know from the very beginning that something went terribly wrong because it's a dual timeline. And you're hearing the story in reverse from one of the characters who's come back, and you're hearing the story as it plays out as well from the beginning. So two different timelines working in different directions, and you know, they come together at the end for you to have the whole picture. And I'm telling you, the whole picture was not what I expected. The whole picture was like, you're hoping against hope a lot, you know, like there's no way that like this character could be this way based on what she's telling me, and she just so masterfully pulled it all together. I just feel like if you're going to look for a mentor text for dual timeline, especially if you're looking at like one character looking back and another character looking forward, read this book no matter what genre you write in, because wow, like this is pretty amazing. And even though it has a lot of religious elements to it, like you definitely don't have to be a person who is religious or interested in religion to find this interesting. I think you do have to be a person who's interested in anthropology. That's, I think, what it would be. And I think the author, oh yeah, the author's Jewish actually. I think she may have been Catholic. I think she may be a convert to Judaism. But you know, the religious elements are not straightforward. They're not very pat answers. There's no like evangelism going on here, evangelization. So yeah, what a good book, especially if you like first contact stories. And then number 3 is another first contact story, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Oh my gosh, you guys, it's so good. It's so good. It was another one of those where I just kept saying, I hope this is as good as everyone says it is, because my husband read it first, then my best friend read it, and then another best friend read it, like a best friend here and a best friend away, and they both told me I needed to read it. And then I asked my husband if he thought that my teenage son would enjoy it, and he said absolutely. So my teenage son read it, and then he was like, Mom, you've got to read this book. I cannot believe you haven't read this book. And then it took me so long. I actually started this in 2022 and just finished it in 2023, but I was mostly done. I had some catch-up work to do with my literary representation career, so I had to put it down, and that was really hard. I did listen to a few chapters of this in audio, and I liked the character voices. So if you're looking at wondering if you should read this, read it or listen to it. I'd say either way, the narrator was really good. My husband read it and then wanted to read it again and thought maybe the audio experience would be good, and he really liked it, and I listened in with him for a couple of chapters, so I can vouch for that. But obviously Andy Weir is the author of The Martian. This book, if you want to contrast the two, has much less profanity. So to read The Martian, I had to get my son the young reader's version, which was great. But this does not have nearly as much of that. The main character is again a man kind of isolated in this situation. I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Doing a lot of ruminating, but with much fewer F-bombs. And I think as far as trigger warnings and content warnings go, there's some talk of sex in like the latter third of the book. but it's not, for a teenager who already knows about it, it's fine. So like, I wouldn't read it to my whole family, but it's darn close. It's super interesting, and I kind of want my younger kids to read it. Like, I'm like, do you want to read this book? But I'll hold off for a little while. But for my teenager, it was fine. It was like a peripheral mention of it, not like a depiction on the page. So for adults, most adults aren't going to be offended by the level of sex or violence or anything in this book. So the premise of Project Hail Mary is that the Earth's sun is dying, and we're not sure why, but we have an idea, and a team of scientists are pulled together to figure out what's going on and maybe how to stop it. But we have a ticking time bomb, a timeline that's very short. We have this amount of time to stop this crisis, and you know, basically the whole world has to band together to do this. And so this group of scientists is given, you know, full reign of all the resources in the world to solve this problem of the sun dying. And they find out that the sun is dying because of an organism, so an extraterrestrial organism, that is leeching away its power. And so our main character, at the beginning of the book, the very beginning, so none of that was a spoiler, because it opens up with our main character in space with amnesia, trying to figure out what has happened. And it's really well done. I know I did hear from one person that they didn't like the slow pace of the beginning while he's figuring out what he doesn't remember, but I found that part fascinating. What would you do if you had amnesia and you had the wherewithal to know you had amnesia and you wanted to do something about it, or you had to do something about it? What would you do to trigger memories or to figure it out? What can you use around you to discern who you are and why you were there? And imagine waking up in space with amnesia. Like, oh my gosh, so many questions. So, and that's just the very, very beginning, and I'm not going to tell you anything else that happens because I feel like that was already borderline spoiler, but you have to know something about it to read it. I didn't know anything about it to read it except for that Andy Weir wrote it. So I went in my best scenario of just, it's a book, it's good, Andy Weir wrote it, you should read it. And I did, and it was, the unfolding of everything happening was beautiful. And I just got to say, this is the best ending of a book that I can remember. So satisfying. There's so many ways he could have ended this book, and I just had all the feels. As soon as I was done reading it, I went down to my husband and I said, it was so good, it ended so good. And he was like, I know, and he got all squealy too. And then I told my son, and he didn't get squealy, but he was like, right? So take it from me, if you can get through the slow first third of the book, it picks up, it gets super interesting and super high stakes, and the ending is fantastic. So I highly recommend it. And so I've got 2 First Contact and 1 time slip romance for my top 3 in 2022. I'd love to hear what your 2022 were. I know we're a bit into 2023 now. I'm super interested to see what I end up what 2023 shakes out to be. I have a prediction that I'm going to end up reading a lot more gothic this year because that's how I'm feeling. I want that mystery and that kind of spooky but not scary, you know? So I have a feeling that's what I'm going to go for, but I'm also every once in a while in the mood for like a super fun like rom-com. So who knows? Maybe this year will look very different. I don't think I'm going to be picking up very many more sci-fi. Definitely going to try to avoid First Contact because both of these were so satisfying. I don't want those pictures to leave my mind yet, but we'll see. I guess you can still tell me if you have any favorite First Contact books or anything along these lines, and I can put it on my list for later because I've got a lot of books to get through in 2023. I'm sure you do too. Good luck. Cheers.